On today's podcast, we're going to jump into the topic of talking about business failure. And if you've ever listened to an interview that I've done on this particular podcast platform in the past, I will ask guests, what are some reasons that you've seen why a business ends up succeeding or failing? We know statistically that about 96% of businesses will never see it to year 10. And so if you happen to be in a business that's reached year 10, congratulations, you're in that 4%. Mine has lasted longer, actually quite a bit longer than 10 years. And it's not an easy journey at all. And of course, there's a number of reasons why a business might succeed or fail. And what I'm going to do on today's podcast is I have 5 C's, the letter C. I have 5 C's that I've kind of categorized some of the reasons why, from my experience, why a business would fail or succeed. And so I'm going to kind of just jump right into this. First is going to be is commitment or lack thereof. So a business owner ends up getting to the point to where they just simply lose their focus or their drive. They just aren't committed to the business like they were at one point. They get to the point of complacency. That's not the second C, kind of staying on the same point, but they just don't remain consistent. They get to the point of just simply just getting to the point of complacency. They're just happy where they're at. They kind of just lose their focus. They just kind of rest on their laurels, so to speak. They just don't have the drive that they had at one point. If we're going to succeed in the mid to long term as a business owner, we have to remain focused. We have to maintain that drive. And it's something that some days we're just going to have to do with purpose, not necessarily just out of pure motivation. There are a lot of days, if you're like I am, getting up in the morning and kind of getting into that morning routine, getting that workout in at some point during the day, eating right, doing those kind of necessary things that to kind of make sure that we are our best self. Many times those things are just done because we know we have to do them. They are things that we just know we have to put in the work on our own physical selves. The same thing is true in our business. There are some days that you're going to show up to the office, you're going to show up to work, and just like your team members, you're just not going to quite be feeling it that way. But as the business owner, we have to remain committed. We have to show up. We have to still have that drive. We still have to have that focus, even though we may not emotionally be quite feeling it that particular day. Or we get to the point that we just become satisfied with where we're at. Just a thought of complacency. We've made a little bit of money. We're just happy where we're at. We're going to try to just coast. We're going to put it on autopilot. Business generally does not work that way. It's kind of one of those things. Either we're going to have forward momentum or we're going to end up with that backward momentum. We're either going forward, we're going to push forward, we're going to drive forward, or we're going to end up slipping backwards. And at the point that we end up sliding backwards, guess what? Our competitor is going to pass us by. Something's going to happen and we're going to find ourselves in a position where our business is not going to be succeeding to the level that we need it to. So first is either lack of commitment or becoming complacent. Second is compromise. We no longer hold to our core values. And you may look at whatever your core values are. I hope you have those documented. I hope you keep those in front of yourself, in front of your team. But what are your core values in your business? And if you get to the point that you begin to compromise on those core values, you're going to find yourself in a position to where your business is going to end up no longer succeeding and really kind of tipping over to the point of possibly failing. For example, I know one of our core values here at my accounting firm is that of integrity. Of course, that's extremely important when you're in the field of accountancy, is to make sure that there's integrity. But we really, as a business, have to hold ourselves to that integrity as well. If I begin to compromise in that particular area, we're going to end up really having some problems. You as a business owner, if you end up compromising in one of your core values, you're going to find yourself in a position to where you're not operating the way that you're supposed to. And if you allow for those core values to become compromised, you're going to also find your profitability compromised. You can probably end up finding yourself in a position to where you're going to end up out of business altogether. So first is a lack of commitment or complacency. Secondly, compromise. Third is compassion. Compassion is actually one of our core values here as a business and for myself personally. And there's actually a scripture verse, probably one that maybe if I had kind of a favorite scripture verse, I'd probably put it out there. And that verse is, "And if some have compassion, making a difference." And I think for those of us as individuals, especially those of us as business owners, that we get into business, we have to have a cause or a purpose that's greater than just simply profiting ourselves Otherwise, I don't think our business will sustain in the long term. And so we really have to kind of keep that focus or that purpose that is greater than our own personal needs, our own personal desires, if our business is going to last for the long term. So what is that reason? What is the true impact that you wanted to make when you got into business? What was that difference that you wanted to make? And you lead with that. If you lead with that day in and day out, what is that purpose? What is that cause that gets you to show up every day? That will leave you in a position of really truly leading with compassion, and that will spill over into the way that you treat your team, the way that you treat your clients, because the true purpose of why you're there will be the reason why you show up. And if that's in front of you, and if you keep that in front of your team, that's going to allow you to operate from a position of compassion. Otherwise, you end up hardened. You end up using people, manipulating people. I truly think that ends up kind of being the point that you end up at if you aren't truly sticking to the reason why you're there. And so whether it's we aren't leading with compassion or we end up compromising in our core values, I think both of those can end up leading us to the same point where it becomes all about us and we end up using other people for our own benefit instead of using our talents to be able to benefit others and to be able to help others and to be able to push that vision forward that we have for the company, for ourselves, for the team members that work alongside of us. Number 4 is cash flow. And so many times a reason a business fails, and I think maybe sometimes this may be one of the top reasons if you were to talk to the kind of the average person on why a business fails, well, they no longer have the cash flow to operate. And that may be one of the top reasons, and it probably is. Many times when a business starts up, they either have equity participants, maybe they take on debt to get that business started. So they have some funds available to them on the front end. Then what ends up happening is they don't continue to make the necessary sacrifices that need to be made within the business to keep the business operational. And so what ends up happening, I think we've seen this here over the last couple of years. We end up taking on a lot of additional debt, and maybe from government money, whatever the case may be. Now we're at the point to where we can no longer can just rest on that easy additional cash flow that's come in. Now at the point that we have to really make the sacrifices that are necessary to keep our businesses moving during, I think, what we are finding ourselves now into the point of being in a recession. And so over the next few years, I think things are going to be extremely difficult. They're getting a little bit difficult now. I think they're only going to get more difficult in the coming months and years. And so if our business is really going to sustain, we're going to have to be willing to make the sacrifices that are necessary to push through during these difficult days. And for some business owners, they get into business and they simply say, okay, I'm going to pay myself first. I'm going to get what I want out of the business first. And then I will go and I'll pay other people and I'll take care of other people. If we end up in that particular mindset in business to where we're going to pay ourselves first, and then I'm going to worry about everybody else, I don't think our business is going to succeed in the long term, because we're going to find ourselves in a pinch with the cash flow. And so we really kind of go through, and I think that cash flow needs to be managed, meaning I do think that we need to make sure that we are paying ourselves inside of our business, and we're paying ourselves what our business should be paid, but understanding there are going to be seasons, especially early on, so maybe our team members are going to get paid, our vendors are going to get paid, and we end up getting paid last. Are we willing to make that sacrifice at times for our business to get to the point of hitting that 10-year mark, to be able to sustain in the long term, and to be able to manage the cash flow that we do have in a way that's going to allow for our business to push through during these difficult days? Do we have the cash in the bank? Have we saved? Or do we have a savings plan? Do we have an emergency plan? Do we have these? Do we have a budget that we truly do stick by? And so are we managing our cash flow in a way that's going to allow us to work through some of the down cycles of our business? And lastly, number 5, the last C is that of conversion. And so it may be a situation to where our product or service loses relevance. Are we keeping our product? Are we keeping our service offerings relevant to the economy and to the clients which we serve? Or do we simply just allow for it to become stagnant? We aren't putting in the effort. So it can be the product or service loses relevance, or we simply cannot generate sales. Are we putting in the work? Many times as a business owner, I know for myself as a business owner, and I have a team, but guess what? The primary sales through the business generally comes through a business owner, especially if you're in the service environment. If you're in the product environment, do you have the people in place to be able to keep that product or that service in front of your potential customer? And are you keeping it fresh? Are you keeping it out there in a way that is going to attract customers? And you are also fulfilling the promises that you made when you sold that product or service. And if you're doing those types of things, generally you'll find your business, and we've talked about this in prior podcasts, you'll find other people talking about you and sending you business. If you aren't doing those types of things, you're going to find the conversion process to be extremely difficult. The 5 C's why a business generally will fail. Number 1, a lack of commitment, or we get to the point of complacency. Number 2, we make compromises. Number 3, we lose compassion. We no longer lead with compassion. Number 4, we have cash flow issues. Or number 5, we simply just aren't able to convert. We simply just aren't able to sell. And in any of those 5 areas, we end up running into some issues. Maybe take one of those, maybe focus on it, work on it, and then continue kind of working through these particular issues, giving attention to that, making sure that we're showing up, that we have the drive, that we have the focus, we're managing our finances well, we're leading in a way that we should as business owners. I think if we're doing these types of things, our business will reach that 10-year mark and we'll find ourselves with a successful business. This is Josh Belk with the Belk on Business podcast. Thank you for taking a few minutes to listen in today. If you haven't already, please ask you to subscribe. Have a wonderful day.